It's Gamescom 2014, and did it surprise us? Well, we got to hear a lot about some games we first saw at E3 and Comic-Con. There were two big announcements that threw us for a loop in the best and worst way. So, good news and bad news. Which would you like to do first?
Let's start with the bad news, because I am so excited about the good news.
I know.
End on a high note.
And it all happened on the same day.
I know.
And I was working, and I got the news mid-shift from you. And it, ruined my day. And that news, of course, is that Rise of the Tomb Raider is going to be an Xbox One/360 exclusive, which has been relegated to a timed exclusive now. I'm guessing in part because of the huge backlash it's been getting.
Well, that was, the worst part. They first announced it as just Xbox exclusive I think it was during the Xbox press conferences. We didn't sit and watch them this time, like we did at E3. Mm-hmm. And so it was there was no other information about it. So, and I know my brain immediately went to Xbox One exclusive, and it's just what? Why? And then the next day they kind of sat down with some other journalists, and Eurogamer reported that it was in fact A, time exclusive, and B, Xbox 360 and Xbox One, which still begs the question of what Microsoft thinks is going to happen, because I'm not a business person, business school dropout. In my mind, it doesn't encourage people that already have a 360 to upgrade to an Xbox One.
Yeah.
And it's not going to encourage me. There are some Xbox One games that I'm really interested in, but I'm not ready to commit to it, especially since they did a lot of backpedaling when they first announced it with the Kinect and things. And this thing can totally tell you're in the room and totally target you for marketers. Not that we do that, but we could totally do that.
Yeah.
That kind of freaked me out and put it off it for a while. Say at least we have the hope that it will come to PlayStation 4 eventually, or other consoles. I'm not sure if they'd go back to PlayStation 3, since PlayStation 3 was so notoriously difficult to develop for, so maybe it would just be PlayStation 4 and PC that'll get it eventually.
I don't know. I feel like if they're probably going to use a similar engine to the first game, so if they already have that all in place, the framework for the game, then it probably won't be that bad.
I don't know.
Just, for shits and giggles, I went on Tumblr in the Tomb Raider tag, and I was like... Is anybody, happy about this decision? And the answer is a resounding no. Mm-hmm. Not even Xbox owners. And I was thinking, if it was a Sony exclusive, because we both have PS4s and PS3s, would I be okay with it? And I don't know. I'd probably be more okay with it. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
But it does kind of feed into something that you and I talk about a lot. Not particularly on the show, but how female-led games are kind of set up for failure in a lot of ways. And then they kind of point fingers at it oh, look at this game. It didn't do well. That's why we can't have females in games. Which,
Ben Kuchera over at Polygon posted an article this morning, I think it was, that explained kind of, at least from Square Enix perspective, why this makes sense. So, I'm still unable to wrap my brain around why Microsoft would do this, but by becoming exclusive, Microsoft is probably, we don't know exactly, but they are probably helping to, take the burden off a lot of the development costs. They might be reducing royalty rates, things like that. So it definitely makes sense from the publisher's perspective, and they will, I think it took something ridiculous, 6 million copies to recoup the development costs for the original Tomb Raider, or the most recent reboot Tomb Raider. So this will kind of hopefully help Square Enix recoup those costs earlier, not immediately write Lara Croft off as a failure. I think the first one wasn't ridiculous, 1 million in the first week or something, completely ridiculous, and they're oh, not enough.
I know, it did so well, and it was still oh, it's a failure.
Right, it's so hard for me to wrap my brain around, but I'm hoping that this, if there's any silver lining, it'll help Square Enix kind of recoup those costs and then step away and let Lara Croft still be the awesome hero she always is on other consoles, and let us enjoy it and maybe continue to publish these other games in the series.
Yeah, they almost immediately sent out this kind of press release because obviously people were upset, and they said something along the lines of, we think that having it exclusive for Xbox is going to give it a wider audience, which makes zero sense because Xbox One, PS4 announced at Gamescom that they've sold over 10 million consoles, and Xbox is still around 5 million. So it's just kind of that's just not true, guys.
That whole statement was just BS.
Yeah, and then they're like, oh, but at least we have the multiplayer game that's coming out, which admittedly I loved Guardian of Light, and I cannot wait to play the next one, but it's not the same.
I mean, I think people would be pissed either way about this decision, but I feel like that it was a press release, but it was a Tumblr post was what it was. The head of Crystal Dynamics got on the official Tomb Raider Tumblr and posted this letter. And I feel like the intention was to kind of talk to fans, be like, hey guys, I'm on your level. And it was so transparent marketing speech.
Yeah.
Like, it just stung that much more. The fact that they're like, don't worry, we haven't forgot about you. We have this other game, which admittedly is cool, but has nothing to do with this game that you want, and that is in question here.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's great. I'll still probably get Lara Croft in the Temple of Osiris, I think it's called, but that doesn't help me understand why Rise of the Tomb Raider isn't going to be something I can buy.
Yeah. And it's also just unfortunate that it was such a critical darling when it came out, you know. People loved the game, and so many people were happy to see like an actually fleshed out female character in the lead, particularly Lara Croft rebooted with that level of respect. And it's just unfortunate that she's going to have such a smaller audience for the next game, at least in the beginning. But the same day, something that literally had us screaming and weeping.
So excited!
A huge announcement from Konami, if you would take us away, Stacey.
Okay, so again, I wasn't there for the press conference, but apparently Sony did something kind of like what they did at E3 with Entwined, where they're like, we have something on their PlayStation Network you could download right now. It's this cool thing called PT from an independent studio you'd never heard of. Hours later, someone finally gets to the end of PT, which I have not done. I'm still stuck. And it reveals PT, not some random horror game from an independent developer nobody's heard of. Actually, the new Silent Hill game from Hideo Kojima, Guillermo del Toro.
Guillermo.
There we go.
Yeah. And
starring Daryl from The Walking Dead. It's called Silent Hills. And I'm so excited.
I'm torn in a lot of ways, just because I'm so excited that Silent Hill is freaking finally back on their radar as an important franchise, because it's just kind of been bandied about between developers, and it hasn't really been given the respect or prestige that it's deserved. But Guillermo del Toro, I mean, that's just kind of like dream developer right there. I mean, if you look at any of his movies, his monsters are ridiculously cool and creative, and his characters are awesome. And if there's one thing that I think will be able to temper Hideo Kojima's terrible history with female characters, I think it's Guillermo del Toro. So I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, he always does a really good job of having these completely monstrous worlds, but at the end, at the center, they're very sincere.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
And they're very empathetic to their characters, who a lot of time are women, from like Pan's Labyrinth to even Pacific Rim with Mako Mori. So that's really interesting. But it was so funny because I was just having kind of a discussion in the comments with one of our commenters, Reverie Nightingale, about how awesome it would be for him to do Parasite Eve. And literally like an hour later, this news came out, and it was like, we still want him to do Parasite Eve because that would be perfect for the reasons you just discussed. But I'm so excited.
I'm still anxious because of Hideo Kojima's involvement in the project. I love the Metal Gear Solid franchise, but there is a lot that's problematic about it, particularly with the female characters. They gave Hideo Kojima the Castlevania franchise, and when he rebooted it, I just thought it was kind of soulless. Like, it was kind of problematic because, you know, the female character, she died before the game even started, so that to, you know, motivate the main character. And it felt like a hollow shell of what the Castlevania series was. So that kind of freaked me out about Silent Hill. But Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah. And the demo is really good. Again, like I said, I am stuck at the part where I think now everybody is stuck where you're trying to get the baby to laugh. And apparently there are rumors now that you have to have a microphone hooked up so it could hear you screaming, and that'll make it laugh, and then the phone will ring, and then you'll finally be able to finish the game. I'm stuck there. But have you played any more of the demo? I know you had started it this morning when I talked to you.
Played about 3 minutes of it. So the thing about first-person horror games is I can't do them. I just can't, because third-person horror games, they're fine because you have that kind of buffer between you and the terror. But with first-person, it's too much. It freaks me out. I just cannot do it. I tried Outlast. I'm like saving up all of my first-person terror for Alien Isolation.
Oh, yes. I'm so excited for that, too.
Because that's the only game that I'm willing to be like, okay, I have to play this game, even if it is first-person, and I'm probably going to poop my pants. I have to do it.
I'm laughing, but, like, my Steam library has me clocked at Amnesia for, like, 6 minutes and 35 seconds. So I am not very good with horror games either. But I love Silent Hill, and I really like this demo and the things that it did, even though we kind of talked about it's first person. I don't feel like the actual game will be first person because they have Norman Reedus. They're not going to pay for him and not show him, I don't think.
Yeah.
So my assumption is it's either going to be all third person or it's going to be like The Room, Silent Hill 4, where there are sections that are first person. And the other thing I really liked about it is just the fact that the puzzles don't make any sense, even though I'm frustrated by the fact that I can't make the baby laugh. You know, we talked in a previous episode about abject horror and the idea that, like, the abject is where meaning collapses. And games are a really potentially very good medium for exploring that and what it means to be horrifying. Because they're just systems, they are, you know, these systems of meaning. And when they stop working, what happens? Do we get frustrated or does it scare the crap out of us? And I think that this game does a really good job of kind of playing with that just enough to break it, quote unquote, and just scare us. And I really hope that the main game does more of that too.
And so now we're just going to take a look at a couple of the other games that were announced at Gamescom or elaborated on. First off, Rayman and Beyond Good and Evil creator Michael Ansel revealed information about a new PS4 exclusive called Wild. And I'm very excited because it takes place on this island, and there are all these cool creatures, skeletons and stuff, but the big draw is that you can basically play as any sentient creature. People have been saying it's like Tokyo Jungle without the Tokyo, except also with goddesses and stuff. But I'm just really hoping that there's a pug in there, and then I will just log hours and hours as a pug. But one of the big things, well, kind of... It's a small thing that to me is big, is that they say that this isn't Ansel's next project, which means that maybe Beyond Good and Evil 2 is his project, because this is a debut effort from his studio Wild Sheep. So it's not his next Ubisoft offering. His next Ubisoft offering is still unknown.
It will remain unknown for
Forever.
Another 10 years. The last guardian of Ubisoft. I kind of watched the trailer after you sent it to me. I didn't realize that you could just be any animal.
You can be anything, any sentient creature.
So I guess next game is Hellblade by Ninja Theory. The trailer looked a lot like Heavenly Sword.
A lot like Heavenly Sword, even to the odd hair.
Yeah, with a little bit of Devil May Cry kind of devil's dust thrown in, which is basically, you know, Ninja Theory just doing what they do. And I love Devil May Cry, like the DMC Devil May Cry, so.
And I pretty much loved Heavenly Sword when it came out. I thought it was a pretty solid little launch title for the PS3. Because I definitely wanted to see more of Nariko and Kai. But, you know, it almost looks like a successor to the game. So
yeah.
I'm really looking forward to it. They know how to make really fun action games, and I'm just, you know, excited for more. And also, I think it's cool that they're doing this independently. They decided they wanted to do a AAA game with that's not going to be, you know, really expensive or anything. So I'm going to see how I think it'll be an interesting project to keep an eye on.
I didn't know that about the independent. I just saw, like, the trailer was, like, sold.
Yeah, exactly.
Another game, I'm not sold on this one, but it just kind of surprised me. Until Dawn by Supermassive Games. It was originally announced as a PlayStation Move game.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, some of my former classmates worked on it and have since left the company. So I assumed it was just shelved, and then all of a sudden it showed up at Gamescom for PlayStation 4.
With Hayden Panettiere.
Yeah, which we have not had a good, like, slasher high school horror game. Like, there just has not been one. They had, I think it was called, like, Obscura, and those were terrible. So I really like to see a good one. I'd really like to see Swery do a good one because I think that would be awesome.
You'd really like to see Swery do everything.
I would. I think he should take a stab at every genre.
Speaking of not being sold, I think I'm anti-sold on BioWare's new game, Battle Realms, which looks the most un-BioWare game I have maybe ever seen.
So boring.
It does. It looks so boring. It looks kind of like an arcade game, like a Left 4 Dead hack and slash 4-player game that's just generic.
Yeah, that's the problem, I think. BioWare in general, their games always look generic. I think it's because they're usually on the shoestring budget, but or their art direction just isn't that good. And because it's something about this game, especially because they built up that trailer that was really mysterious and surreal, and it's a dungeon crawler. It's the only potentially interesting thing is it's not just 4 players. It's 4 players versus 1 player. So one player is doing the dungeon master shadow lord thing, and everyone else is crawling through the dungeon, which that could be potentially really fun. Mm-hmm. But it just that trailer did not suggest anything that you see, and the whole they're modern teens that get powers. It's just
everything about it just screams. Yeah.
There's no screaming. Well,
I guess it doesn't really scream. It just kind of shrugs and looks at the camera.
It's like The Order 1886. They also had a trailer for The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, which by the Astronauts, which is a game we've been hearing about a lot now. They had a new trailer, and I still have no idea what you actually do in it or what it's about. But every time I see a trailer, I'm like, yeah, what is this? This looks cool, yeah. I want to play this, even though I have no idea what we're playing. It could be a movie, and I'd probably be happy. So I still want to see more from that. And then we finally got to see playable stuff from Bloodborne, which was announced at E3. I'm still pretty excited about Bloodborne. Just throwing that out there.
So that does it for our Gamescom 2014 coverage. Let us know of any games that you're excited for, what you feel about the Rise of the Tomb Raiders exclusivity, as well as Guillermo del Toro and Hideo Kojima's Silent Hills, as well as any other games that we forgot to mention. And don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date on our latest episodes and water cooler discussions.
What the hell is this?